On his way home from school while picking up bottles, my son was bitten by a mad dog. To save money, he gritted his teeth and came home, asking me to staple the wound shut with a stapler. With tears in my eyes, I took him to a small clinic for a simple bandage. My son was filled with guilt. "Mom, I'm sorry, but 10 yuan is our food money for the whole day." But as we turned around, we ran into my husband at the upscale pet store next door, swiping his card to buy a grooming package for his white Moonlight's dog. Mr. Fu is so kind to his wife. He comes every week to get Sam the top-tier grooming service. Yes, it costs 6 figures each time. Mr. Fu is really generous. Chapter 1. My son and I stood frozen in place, staring at Marco Fu in disbelief. He hadn't noticed us. Holding the dog and Ava, he turned and got into the car. My son tugged on my sleeve. "Didn't Dad say he failed in his investments and owes millions? Why would he still spend so much on a dog?" I forced myself to stay calm and went to the pet store to confirm, still clinging to hope. But the clerk's words felt like a plunge into an icy abyss for both me and my son. "Are you asking about Mr. Fu? He's one of our black card members. A 6-figure sum is nothing to him. Even that dog in Mrs. Fu's arms costs over $1 million. I forced a bitter smile as I left with my son, silent the entire way. When we got home and I saw the rough bandage on his wound, I could no longer hold back my tears. My son had also realized Marco had been lying and asked in utter confusion, "Mom, if Dad is this rich, why did he lie to us? Does he not want us anymore?" Marco had never told me the truth about his family background. Even after we got married, he only said he was working in investments. Not long after our wedding, he claimed he'd gone bankrupt, owing 7 figures in debt to a regular family like ours. That was astronomical. But instead of abandoning him, I took on 3 jobs to support us. My son was always understanding. After school, he would help me collect bottles to ease our burden. Even when he was mocked and isolated by classmates, he never complained. "As long as we save up quickly, Dad can pay off the debt, and we'll finally have a good life." But now it turns out Marco had been faking poverty all along. The two of us were living worse than a dog by his pretentious coquette's side. Snapping back to the moment, I choked up and asked my son, "If that's really the case, do you want to live with Dad or Mom in the future?" His eyes dimmed, and his voice trembled with grievance. "Can Dad please not leave us? I promise to be good. I don't want to be separated from either of you. Mom, can we give Dad 1 more week? I'll try to talk to him." Worried he'd be too heartbroken, I reluctantly agreed. Just then, Marco came through the door. Seeing us standing in the living room, he frowned slightly. "What's going on? Why do you both look so pale?" My son spoke first. "Dad, I got bitten by a dog today. It hurts." He raised his little hand, but because the wound was so ghastly, Marco's first reaction was disgust. "How could you be so careless? Must have cost quite a bit again, right? Your mom and I work hard for our money. Can't you stop causing trouble? No dinner for you tonight. Maybe that'll teach you a lesson." I clenched my fists. My son's hurt. And not only do you not care, you even punish him by not letting him eat. Do you even care about this family? Marco had never seen me so angry. Realizing that, he began to argue back. We were at each other's throats, and my son quickly stepped in to pull me away. "Mom, it's okay. I'm not really that hungry. Dad's right. I did cause trouble. I'll just go do my homework." Chapter 2. Perhaps my son's disappointment was too evident, because Marco's expression softened a bit. "All right, Tom, how could Dad really bear to punish you? I was out for a business dinner and brought back some food. Take it to your room and eat." He then pulled a bag of leftovers from his bag. It was fish, my son's least favorite food. Watching my son's little face sink with sorrow, I snatched the leftovers and threw them in the trash. "Enough, Marco. We can cook for ourselves. We don't need your leftovers." Marco Fu furrowed his brows. "Zaroli, what's wrong with you today? What did I do to upset you? I specially brought that back. That fish costs thousands." I sneered. "So you think I wronged you? Then do you even remember, Tom is allergic to seafood? For 7 years. You haven't contributed a single cent to this family. Every time I ask, it's just business dinners. Have any of them ever been successful?" My son pouted. tears streaming down like a broken string of pearls. But Marco didn't even glance at him. He turned to leave, speaking with disdain. Just like I thought, you're a gold-digging woman, and now you're using Tom's allergy as an excuse. If you look down on me that much, I'll just leave. Even now, he thought I resented him for not giving us money. I was so angry. Pain stabbed through my chest. I had to bend over the sofa and rest a long while to recover. My son wiped away my tears. Mom, don't be sad. Dad's just angry. He hadn't even calmed himself down yet, but still tried to defend Marco for the sake of the family. Such a thoughtful child, I couldn't bear to see him suffer in silence anymore. I patted his little head and forced a smile. Mom knows. Let's go make something tasty for Tom, okay? He sighed with relief and nodded firmly. When dinner was ready, he used my phone to send Marco a voice message. Dad, Mom made soya noodles today. Will you come home to eat? After sending it, he anxiously hugged the phone, waiting for Marco's reply. But not until after we finished eating did Marco coldly reply. Busy. I sighed and sent my son back to his room. Just as I was about to talk to Marco, I received a friend request. It was from Ava. Once I accepted, she immediately sent me several videos. Turns out, Marco was feeding Ava's dog and didn't have time to reply to our son. In the video, Marco was gentle and patient, a stark contrast from how he treated us that afternoon. Zara, so what if you stole your chance and married Marco? In the end, he still only has eyes for me. You'll never beat me. You're not even worthy of competing. That's right. After Marco broke up with Zara, he fell into severe depression. He even once tried to jump into a river. I had liked him in secret for a long time. I happened to be passing by and saved him without a second thought. When he woke up, Marco confessed and said he wanted to take responsibility for me. At the time, I wasn't sure if he still had feelings for someone else, so I rejected him. Don't worry, after nearly dying, I've come to realize something. I just want to be with someone who truly loves me. It was only after Marco promised me repeatedly that I agreed to date him. We eventually got married and spent 7 years together. I don't know when they reconnected. I didn't reply to Ava. Instead, I silently called a lawyer friend. Help me draft a divorce agreement. Chapter 3. My lawyer friend asked in disbelief. Zara, have you finally come to your senses? Not sacrificing everything for that man who never appreciated it? Turns out, my friends had all seen things more clearly than I ever did. I replied with a quiet mem. The voice on the other end instantly became more cheerful. That's great, Zara. You have no idea, as your best friend. I've been hoping so badly you'd pull yourself out of this mess. Don't worry. I'll get that divorce agreement drafted and sent to you as fast as I can. Feeling her joy, my heart was still tangled with mixed emotions. I thought back to the time before I married Marco. I had my own life then. I was bright, capable, full of light, someone who shone. But after marrying Marco, it was like I lost myself. I gave up my career, left my family and friends, and revolved my whole world around him. I poured everything I had into our marriage. And in the end, I was left with nothing, just a shell of a person. I gave my best friend a few more instructions, then hung up. The first message on my phone was, unsurprisingly, from Ava. She'd sent numerous videos and photos, full of taunting and provocation. She boasted about how caring Marco was. See this? Marco always brushes my dog's fur so gently and fetches water for me to soak my feet. There were many more messages just like that, dripping with mockery. I was going to ignore her, but thinking about how my son had been hurt today, and his father was off lingering in another woman's arms, the anger in me could no longer be contained. I opened the chat and fired back at Ava. If he loves you so much, why hasn't he divorced me and made you his wife instead of keeping you a mistress? Or do you just enjoy being the third party in someone else's marriage? Send me garbage like this again and I'll post all of it on my moments. Let's see how proud you'll feel then. She was probably furious. I saw typing pop up several times, but she never sent anything in return. Just as I breathed a sigh of relief, I heard movement behind me. I turned around. It was my son. I didn't know when he'd come over, but he'd clearly heard everything. He now knew I was preparing to divorce Marco. Kids can't hide their emotions well, but my son was doing his best to stay strong. His little face was pale, but he held back his tears. His voice was choked with emotion. Mom, you're really not going to forgive Dad? Looking into his hopeful eyes, my heart broke. At his age, he still didn't have the strength to face the separation of his parents. I felt guilty, too. Despite being so young, my son had done so much to try to keep this family together. I crouched down and hugged him. Don't worry, I remember what I promised. I'll give him 1 more week. If he still didn't change by then, I'd take my son and leave, never to see Marco again. My son hugged me back just as tightly. After comforting each other, we both returned to our rooms for the night. For once, I didn't wait up for Marco. After all, there was no way he'd come home tonight. But unexpectedly, loud noises stirred me awake in the middle of the night. Marco had stumbled back drunk. The moment he stepped inside, he nearly collapsed. I caught him, steadying his staggering frame. A strong, cloying scent hit me, Ava's perfume. Nausea surged in my stomach. Taking advantage of the open door, I dragged Marco back out, slammed the door shut, and locked it in one swift move. Chapter 4. Marco Fu opened his eyes, realizing he never made it inside. He started pounding on the door, yelling for me to make him hangover soup. He always had business dinners, so getting drunk was nothing new. I used to feel sorry for him. Every time I saw him this wasted and dazed, my heart would ache. He'd always say he was working hard, that if I earned more and helped out more, things would be better. But now, seeing him like this again, I couldn't care less. Still, he was making such a racket. It woke up our son. My boy tiptoed out, trying not to disturb me. With his small body, he helped Marco stay steady. Dad, lean on me. I'll go get you some warm water. Mom needs to rest. Then he gently knocked on my bedroom door and said, Mom, go to sleep. I'll take care of Dad. You don't need to worry. Leaning against the door, I sighed deeply. I didn't want to take care of Marco anymore, but I also couldn't bear to tire out my son. He was still a child. Lack of sleep could affect his growth, and he had school the next day. He couldn't afford to be tired. I silently cursed Marco and angrily opened the door. He was slumped like a pile of mud against the wall. My son was carefully helping him drink water. Go back to your room and sleep. You have school tomorrow. Don't stay up late. Don't come out again. Hearing that, he reluctantly gave Marco a hug. After he went back to his room, I dumped Marco carelessly onto the sofa. The impact jolted him awake for a moment. He clutched the back of his head, wincing in pain, and looked at me, my face cold as ice. Marco's expression shifted immediately. He barked, Zara, what's your problem? How dare you treat me like this? I didn't respond right away. I just stared at him with fury. My eyes locked on the lacy underwear that had slipped from his clothes, and I clenched my fists. Marco, don't you feel disgusting? He was about to shout back but stopped short when he, too, saw the lace panties draped over his leg. His face darkened, and the next second, he flung them far across the room. He glanced at me sheepishly, but his tone still didn't soften. Don't look at me like that. I don't even know where that came from. Absolutely vile. I turned away, unwilling to say another word. I went back to my room and locked the door behind me. The next morning, I got up as usual, but this time, I only made breakfast for my son and myself. Marco, maybe feeling guilty, didn't complain like he normally would. He just sat quietly, watching us eat. My son sensed the tension between us. His eyes darted between us, but he didn't dare say a word. I ignored the few times Marco looked like he wanted to speak. After we finished eating, I grabbed my son's school bag and got ready to take him to school. Marco stopped me. Zara, I'll take him to school today. I held my son's hand, hesitant to trust Marco with him, but my son gently tugged on my hand. Mom, can Dad take me today, please? His eyes sparkled with hope. All right, I let go. My son happily let go of my hand. Bouncing over to Marco, he cautiously grabbed the hem of Marco's shirt. Watching him, my heart ached. He had never been shown affection by his father. Now, just because Marco offered to take him to school, he was this happy. And yet, they were father and son. Blood. Family. Chapter 5. After Marco took our son to school, I stayed home and began preparing for the divorce. Though I had promised our son to give Marco one more chance, I no longer held out any hope. I began seriously dividing our assets. It was laughable, really. He had so much money. Yet within this family, our household, there was barely anything to split. My heart was bitter, but I didn't let that stop me. Along with the asset division, I also sent out a few resumes. Since marrying Marco, I'd been a full-time housewife for far too long. After the divorce, I didn't want to be trapped in this tiny world any longer. It was time I stood on my own again. All of that took barely 2 hours. But just as I finished organizing the documents and sent them off to my lawyer, I received a call from an unknown number. Is this Mess Lee? Your son has been in a car accident and is currently being resuscitated in the hospital. There's no adult with him. My mind went blank, panic surged through every inch of my body. I rushed out the door, blindly scrambling my way to the hospital. On the way, I kept calling Marco. How could our son be left alone? Where the hell had Marco gone? But Marco didn't answer. I called him 25 times. Not once did he pick up. It wasn't until I stood in the hospital corridor and saw the glowing red emergency surgery sign outside the operating room that I broke down. In that moment, my heart was torn apart, and my eyes filled with tears. I sat down, knees trembling, hands clasped against my forehead in silent prayer. Half an hour later, the surgeon finally stepped out. He didn't look good either. You're the parent, right? How could you be so careless with a child? If he had been brought in any later, we wouldn't have been able to save him. Fortunately, he's stable now, but his spinal nerves were damaged. His left leg is paralyzed. The words hit me like thunder. My legs gave out and I collapsed into the chair. Tears flooded out uncontrollably. The doctor frowned, sighed, and walked away. I wanted to call Marco and demand an explanation. But before I could, a message from Ava popped up. Marco had taken Ava's dog to the hospital. From the photos she sent, it was even in the very same hospital, on the first floor. Message after message came in, taunting and smug. Sis, are you still trying to use a kid to tie Marco down? Really? When will you understand? In Marco's eyes, you and your child together aren't even worth as much as my dog. Her words pierced me like knives. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I stormed downstairs, and I saw it, Marco, arms wrapped affectionately around Ava. She cradled her dog, who didn't look the least bit sick. Marco's voice rang out, soothing and gentle. All right, don't worry, just take it in for a few more checkups. Ava leaned into his chest, feigning sweetness. Then, if it turns out nothing's wrong, I've just wasted your time, haven't I? Marco, won't you be mad at me? You looked so busy today. Marco kissed her hair. What could be more important than you? That did it, I snapped. I rushed forward and shoved Ava aside, my hands flying straight to Marco's throat. But it wasn't enough. Blinded by rage, I bit down on him, nails clawing at his face. Ava shrieked in terror, clutching her dog, paralyzed in place. Chapter 6. At first, Marco didn't even register that it was me. Only when Ava screamed did he react. He grabbed my hair and shoved me away roughly, then slapped me hard across the face. Zara, what the hell is wrong with you? Acting like a damn lunatic. Ava's eyes welled up with tears as she hugged her dog, stepping between us like some fragile little white flower. Her voice trembled with emotion. Sis, are you really so upset that Marco came to keep me company? I'm sorry. Please don't hit him again. Her pathetic display, dripping with the pretentious coquette act, made my blood boil. I slapped her across the face, pointing at her nose. I snapped. Shut up. Marco had never seen me like this. For a moment, he just stood there, stunned. Then I grabbed his collar and shouted. You said you were taking our son to school, so why are you here? Is her dog really that important? Are you even a father? Our son got into a car accident. He almost died. His left leg is paralyzed. And where were you? Fussing over a damn dog. Marco stared at me, dumbfounded, caught off guard. Then he pried my hands off, straightened his clothes, and put his scowl back on. You're being ridiculous, Zara Lee. You've really lost it. You expect me to believe something that extreme without proof? Are you out of your mind? I let out a bitter laugh. Even now, he wouldn't believe me. The first thing he did when I told him our son was hurt wasn't worry, it was doubt. Marco, are you even human? You really think I'd joke about something like this? You're coming with me right now. Go see for yourself whether I'm lying. I yanked his arm again, hard enough to drag him along. You better have the nerve to say that again after seeing your son. But of course Ava wouldn't let me win so easily. She clung to me, trying to hold me back. Then she turned to Marco with tear-filled eyes. Marco, don't go. His gaze wavered, but seeing my raw desperation, he seemed half convinced. After all, that was still his child. And what would it hurt to go look? Ava, wait here. I'll go take a quick look and come right back. All right? Ava glared daggers at me. She didn't want Marco slipping away. I saw her subtly pinch the dog's leg. The poor thing yelped in pain and squirmed in her arms. She instantly hugged it tighter like it was a baby, tears rolling down her cheeks. Marco, look! My dog, he's... And just like that, Marco's attention shifted entirely. He shook my hand off and frowned at me. You always make up these lies. If I don't see our son hurt with my own eyes, I can't trust your words. But Ava's dog is clearly in pain. I can't just leave. Then he wrapped his arm around Ava and walked away. I watched their loving silhouettes disappear. And finally, I broke. Marco, get back here. Your son needs you. But he didn't turn around. He walked even faster. And I stood there, screaming through my tears, utterly and completely shattered. Chapter 7. I returned to the hospital room like a ghost. After wiping my face to make sure no one could tell I had been crying, I took a deep breath and walked in. The anesthesia had worn off. My son's small, pale face lay against the pillow, his body wrapped in bandages. When he saw me, he couldn't hold back his tears. His trembling lips tried to form words. I rushed to his side and leaned in close. He sobbed softly. Mom, it hurts so much. I covered my eyes, unable to hold it in any longer. I apologized over and over again, blaming myself for letting Marco take him. I should have known, Marco would never send you to school. When has he ever cared that much? But my son shook his head and began telling me what had happened. Marco really had taken his hand to walk him to the car. My son had been thrilled, chatting nonstop on the way. But Marco had been glued to his phone, barely responding. Even when they got in the car, he nearly forgot my son was there. But that didn't matter to my boy. Just being able to spend time with his father made him happy. He had even imagined that Marco would walk him all the way into the classroom. Everyone would see that he had a handsome father. Then no one would call him a fatherless kid anymore. No one would gossip about his mother again. Just thinking about that had put a bright smile on his face. Then Marco got a phone call. My son heard a woman's voice and thought it was me. Is that mommy? He asked. Marco frowned and quickly covered his mouth. The voice on the other end paused, then Ava's whining began. My son didn't know what that woman said to Marco. He only remembered that after the light turned green, Marco pulled over to the side of the road. Daddy, we're not at school yet, and I'm going to be late, my son said anxiously, glancing at his little watch. Get out, came Marco's cold reply. What? My son thought he'd misheard. Get out. Son, I have to pick someone else up. You can go to school by yourself today. Marco had already unlocked the door. But Daddy, it's the first time you're taking me. My son's voice was full of hurt. But Marco didn't care. He unbuckled the seatbelt. You're just like your mom, so stubborn and disobedient. Hearing the growing impatience in his father's voice, my son was heartbroken. He got out of the car, devastated, and walked slowly along the sidewalk until he was hit by a speeding car. As he finished telling the story, I held his hand and cried uncontrollably. But he, still so sensible, wiped my tears and tried to comfort me. It's okay, Mommy, I'm fine now. Mom, I agree we should let him go. He's not a good family for us. I nodded in pain and promised him I would do everything to help him recover. After the anesthesia wore off and I comforted him to sleep, I returned home and packed up everything. Then I quickly rented an apartment near the hospital. Right then, my lawyer friend sent over the finalized divorce agreement. Without hesitation, I sent it to Marco. He, of course, was still with Ava, enjoying their cozy little world. Having set my messages to do not disturb, while I stayed by my son's bedside day and night, Ava was flooding her social media with photos of her and Marco flaunting their romance. But inside, I felt nothing at all anymore. Chapter 8. Once my son let go of Marco, his mood improved significantly, and with me carefully nursing him back to health, he soon recovered enough to be discharged. I pushed his wheelchair through the hospital corridor. We laughed together. It had never felt so light between us. "Mommy, when are we leaving?" he asked. "Today. How about we go right now?" I teased. He giggled. "Yes, let's go." We returned home, and I immediately went to the school to process his transfer. The homeroom teacher looked at me with sympathy. "Is Tom doing okay?" I nodded with a gentle smile. "Much better now. Thank you for taking care of him." The teacher quickly waved her hand. "It's my duty." She then hurried to help with the transfer paperwork. "Take care, and safe travels." I sighed softly, but then straightened up again and took my son to the high-speed rail station. As we boarded the train, both of us felt truly happy. I deleted Marco's contact. When my son saw that, he hugged me tightly. "Mommy, from now on, I'll protect you, all right, my little man." I smiled. Meanwhile, Marco, still clinging to Ava, suddenly felt a strange jolt in his chest. He thought to himself, "Why haven't I gotten a single message from her all these days?" He recalled the way I looked that day at the hospital. Maybe he really should have gone to see for himself. Days had passed without him checking in, and even he started to feel guilty. Ava clung to him, whining and making demands. But this time, it only irritated him. Marco pushed her off and took out his phone to message me. After typing and deleting several times, he finally sent, "I'll be home for dinner tonight," but he was immediately met with a red exclamation mark. Marco froze. He didn't expect. I had deleted him. Panicking, he called me, but found he had been blocked too. Ava tried to snuggle up again. "Marco, what's wrong?" That push really hurt. She tried to draw him back in, but something had finally clicked for Marco. He shoved her away, jumped in his car, and drove home like a madman. But when he opened the door, he found an empty house. Not a single trace of me or our son remained. Even the wedding photo on the dining table had been cut in two. Overwhelmed by panic and confusion, he finally thought to check the school. He called my son's homeroom teacher. "Hi, is Tom at school today? I'm his father." There was a pause. The teacher's voice was puzzled. "Tom's already transferred out. His mother said they were leaving town, and Tom hasn't been to school in days." Marco's legs buckled, and he leaned on a chair to keep himself up. The teacher, sensing the situation, remembered what I had said. Tom had always been such a good, steady, kind student. He couldn't help but jab at Marco with a bitter tone. "Don't tell me, you didn't even know Tom was in a car accident? What kind of father are you?" Marco let the phone fall from his hand. It was only now that he finally realized I had been telling the truth. The image of my devastated face flashed before his eyes again and again. He couldn't begin to imagine what our son had been through. His heart clenched so tight it felt like it might burst. His vision darkened, and then everything went black. Chapter 9. My son and I moved to a larger city. One by the sea, he loved the ocean. We officially said goodbye to our past and began a new life. At his new school, things were completely different. No one gossiped about him coming from a single-parent home. No one looked down on him because of his injury. Quite the opposite, his classmates often invited him to play. Several times, he even asked his teacher to call me, saying he wouldn't be home for dinner. Helpless, I'd ask, "What are you off to do today?" "Play soccer," he'd answer excitedly. It gave me a headache, but all I could do was remind him to be safe. Since moving, I had continued taking him to physical therapy every day. He stayed strong and optimistic, always telling me he could feel something in his legs. I'd smile, never letting go of hope, and kept bringing him for treatment. One day, while I was cooking, I heard water splashing onto the floor. Then came my son's excited shout. Mom, I can feel my leg." Tears welled in my eyes in disbelief. The two of us hugged each other tightly, crying with joy. I thought everything was finally moving in the right direction. But that was when Marco showed up again. That day, I was pushing my son's wheelchair. We were laughing together on our way home. Marco Fu stood in our path. He looked far more haggard than before. His messy hair and stubbled face stripped away all his former pride. He stepped forward and held out a bouquet of flowers. Zara Lee. Long time no see. I've missed you so much. I instinctively pulled my son back and snapped at Marco. What are you doing? Tom's allergic to pollen, you didn't know? Marco looked helpless. In a panic, he stuffed the flowers back into the wrapping and tossed them in a nearby trash can. He bowed repeatedly, apologizing nervously. I'm sorry, I forgot. Zara. I've missed you. I've realized all my mistakes. Can you give me another chance? Look! I even bought groceries. Let me cook for you tonight. He eagerly handed me the bag, but it was all food I disliked. I didn't even glance at it. No need, I said coldly, realizing I wouldn't budge. He turned to my son and offered him a toy. Tom, look! It's the racing car you always wanted, the most expensive, the newest, the best. But Tom didn't even glance his way. He pushed his wheelchair around Marco. Mom, let's go home. Don't talk to that man. That man, those words pierced Marco like a dagger. He turned to me, pleading, as if he didn't understand how things had turned out this way. Looking at my mature, thoughtful son and the pathetic man Marco had become, I found it ironic. Go, Marco Fu. It's over between us. I didn't take a penny from you, I only took Tom. And as you can see, we have nothing to do with you anymore. With that, my son and I headed upstairs, ignoring him. But Marco was stubborn. He refused to leave and rented an apartment nearby. Tired of the harassment, I called the police and applied for a restraining order. Marco was devastated and tried every way he could to find us again. He brought a new agreement, saying he would give us all his money. I've broken it off with Ava. Let's start over. I'll give you and Tom anything. A boy should grow up with his father. But I refused again. For 7 years. It didn't matter whether you were around or not. We don't need you now either. And I don't need your money anymore. I've been hired by a great company. I can give Tom and myself a good life. So please, stop disturbing us. Let's part ways with dignity. Chapter 10. But Marco still refused to give up. He couldn't understand why I cared so much about Ava. After all, he believed we'd only met a few times. In his mind, he had shown restraint, though his relationship with Ava was ambiguous. At least he'd never brought it to my face. We didn't do anything. He insisted. I know you care. I swear on my life, I never touched another woman after we got married. Why can't you just give me a chance? I really want to make it right for you and Tom. I found it laughable. He thought that just because I hadn't seen the affair, it wasn't real? To Marco, if the wife didn't catch the mistress, then the mistress didn't count. I was speechless. I unlocked my phone and showed him Ava's private messages and her hidden social media posts. Just as I expected, all of Ava's public displays of affection were visible to only me. It's exhausting being with you, having to tolerate a third party stepping all over me, and your constant lies about being broke. Marco felt his body go cold. Looking at Ava's cruel messages, he had no excuse. You knew all along? He stammered. Of course I did. You could spend a fortune on Ava's dog, but not a cent to make our home more comfortable. Marco, you're disgusting. He shook his head, still trying to explain, but I was done listening. I shut the door in his face. He never came to find us again. Marco was filled with regret. He had lost me. And he had lost a warm, loving family, so he blamed it all on Ava. At first, he kidnapped her and tortured her. She managed to escape not long after, but he didn't stop. He grew increasingly unhinged, obsessed with destroying her. One stormy night, in a busy city intersection, Marco hit Ava with his car. She died on the spot. Marco didn't run. Instead, he picked up the fruit knife he had prepared in the car and stabbed himself to death. The case made the news. My son and I found out through a report. Many people came to express their condolences, but my son and I simply smiled with relief. Not long after, a lawyer, appointed by Marco, delivered his will. He left all his remaining assets to me and our son. From then on, the rest of our lives were finally ours to live, peacefully, and on our own terms.